Ever driven by one of those massive train yards, like at night?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of mesmerizing, isn't it? Like a secret world all lit up with the sounds of clanging and those engines rumbling.
It's easy to forget it's even there most of the time. But then you see it and it's like, whoa, this whole other system humming along.
Exactly. And today, we're diving into that world, getting to know the folks who make it all work, with a deep dive into the career of a shunter.
And it is a deep dive.
We are talking about the ins and outs of this profession, using RoleCatcher's Shunter Career Guide as our, well,
Our roadmap, they really get into the weeds on this one, which is perfect for our deep dive.
now you might be thinking a shunter, but for anyone who's into logistics, ever wondered about a career change, or, let's be real, just loves trains,
Or even those amazingly detailed model train sets.
this one's for you.
Because shunters are basically the conductors of that whole intricate dance you see in a train yard.
They're the ones making sure everything runs smoothly, keeping those trains moving, and trust me, it's way more complex than it looks.
Oh, absolutely. And it's crucial, right? I mean, we're talking about keeping supply chains moving, goods getting where they need to go.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher really digs into what that actually entails. Like, they break down how shunting is about so much more than just hitching and unhitching cars.
Right. It's about the whole process of assembling and disassembling entire trains, which, when you think about it, is like essential for the whole rail network to function.
It's wild, right? Like one wrong move could cascade into delays across, well,
The entire system.
yeah. The guide even goes into detail about how shunters use these powerful locomotives called shunting units.
They're like the unsung heroes of the rail yard.
Totally. Like, I always pictured the train engineer as the one in control, but it turns out there's this whole other role that's just as important.
More than just important, they're the ones making sure those trains actually get put together and taken apart correctly. Talk about high stakes.
And speaking of high stakes, the guide also gets into all the different tasks involved, things like switching wagons between tracks.
Oh, and building trains according to their destinations, making sure all the cargo's going to the right place.
It's like a giant game of Tetris, but with, tons of steel.
And a whole lot more writing on it than just a high score.
And it's not all sunshine and roses out there on the tracks, is it?
Definitely not a job for someone who wants to work in a climate-controlled office.
RoleCatcher gets into that too, right? Like the actual day-to-day reality for a shunter.
Yeah, they don't sugarcoat it. They're out in all weather, dealing with the noise, the physical demands.
I mean, I guess that's kind of a given when you're working with, trains.
Right. But it's easy to overlook that when you're just reading a job description.
And it made me wonder, too, about the whole career path for a shunter. I mean, it seems like a field where experience really matters.
Oh, absolutely. And RoleCatcher breaks it down into these four main stages, right? You've got entry-level, junior, experienced, and senior shunter.
It's interesting, though, because when I was reading that, I kind of pictured it as this very linear progression. But you had a really interesting take on that.
Well, what I found really fascinating is how many shunters find that jump from junior to experienced to be the most demanding.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because that's where you go from just sort of following instructions to needing this really deep understanding of like the whole yard's dynamic.
Makes sense. Like, you're not just moving cars around anymore. You're responsible for making sure the whole system flows smoothly.
Exactly. And that takes a whole other level of, I don't know, mastery almost.
It's like you've got to know the rules of the game, but then you also have to be able to think ahead, anticipate problems before they happen.
And those example profile sections that RoleCatcher includes, they really highlight that aspect,
Right, like that one junior shunter who talked about the thrill of figuring out how to optimize train movements for maximum efficiency.
It's like solving a giant puzzle, but with real-world consequences.
Yeah, there's a lot riding on those decisions, literally and figuratively.
And speaking of pressure, the guide also emphasizes the importance of those, what do they call them, those soft skills, communication, teamwork.
Oh, right, because you're not just working in isolation. You've got to coordinate with engineers, other yard personnel, and then there are those unexpected delays.
Exactly. Things rarely go exactly to plan in a job like this.
Which actually reminded me of something else RoleCatcher mentioned about the interview process for shunters.
Oh, yeah, they actually include some real interview questions, right, to help people prepare.
And some of them are tough. Like, they really make you think on your feet, which makes sense, given what we've just been talking about.
It's like they want to see how you handle pressure, how you think through a problem, not just whether you can, recite facts about train cars.
It's like they're looking for that ability to, like, stay calm under pressure, make those split-second decisions.
Which, let's face it, is going to come up a lot in a job like this.
Totally. And that actually makes me think about, well, the whole rise of automation in like every industry these days. It made me wonder about the future of shunting.
Right. Like, are we going to see robot shunters someday?
Exactly. And it's interesting because RoleCatcher actually does touch on that a bit.
Yeah, they do, which I thought was really insightful because, I mean, it'd be easy to just, like, gloss over that whole aspect.
And it would be easy to assume, right, that automation might, well, I don't know, maybe make shunters obsolete at some point.
Right, but the guide actually makes a really compelling argument against that.
So what are they saying? Like, what's the future look like for shunters, even with all this technology?
Well, they basically say that while automation is definitely changing things, the demand for skilled shunters isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Really? So even with all the advances in like self-driving vehicles and all that, there's still a need for that human element.
Exactly. They compare it to, like, having a sophisticated autopilot system on an airplane. Even with all that technology, you still need a skilled pilot in the cockpit, ready to take over if something unexpected happens.
It's like that extra layer of like security, knowing that there's someone who can anticipate problems and
And react in real time.
yeah, exactly. Which machines, as advanced as they are, they're not quite there yet.
Not quite. So yeah, it seems like shunting is a career with, some real staying power.
It really makes you appreciate that role.
Yeah.
Like they're kind of the unsung heroes, keeping those trains running on time and, well, keeping our world moving.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, for anyone listening who's intrigued by this whole world of logistics, who likes the idea of a job that's, hands-on, challenging, and essential.
And maybe a little bit adventurous, too.
Exactly. Shunting might just be the perfect career path. And hey, even if you're not looking for a job change, it's fascinating to get this behind-the-scenes look at how things work.
It really is. It kind of makes you see those train yards differently, doesn't it? Like, there's this whole other world operating right under our noses, and shunters are the ones making it happen.
They are. And with that, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. We've explored the ins and outs of shunting, from the day-to-day tasks to the career path, and even, like, the philosophical questions about automation and the future of work.
It's been a deep dive, for sure. But as always, we want to leave you with something to think about. So here's a question for all our listeners. With the rise of e-commerce, online shopping and all that, and this growing focus on sustainability, how do you think the role of the shunter will continue to evolve in the years to come?
It's a big question, and there's no easy answer, but it's definitely something worth pondering. And hey, maybe it'll spark some interesting conversations out there in the world.
I hope so. Because as we've seen today, even in a world increasingly dominated by technology, there's still a vital role for skilled trades and those who keep things moving, literally.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of shunting. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and who knows what hidden career gems you might uncover.